I'm Anthony. I've been playing poker for a living since 2019. Hit that intro.
Don't soul roll me if you get quad fours, man.
You folded king, king, jack, jack? You owe me $350. Your money should be in there too.
Did you bluff me?
Would I ever bluff?
I'm leaving that shit. I'm on
No,
tilt.
it's on tilt. Thank you, sir.
I would not lie to you, sir. I told you I had a full house. Doing the Lord's work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Blinds are now 800, 1600, and there are two limpers. In early position, I look down at Ace-Ace 5-2 Rainbow. While I'm not thrilled with my shitty side cards and lack of suits, I still take the aggressive option, raising the pot to 8,800. One opponent thinks for quite some time, but winds up laying it down, but one of the limpers does make the call, so we're going heads up to a flop of Ace 7-6 with two hearts. When it checks to me, I flop top set, and some backdoor straight possibilities, but this board is pretty wet, and I don't want to let my opponent outdraw me for free. Given this pot is already pretty large, I opt to not get cute or take chances, betting the full pot of 21,600. They instantly muck, and we take down a nice size pot. Blinds are up to 1,000, 2,000, and there are a few limpers. I look down at Ace 10, 9, 2, double suited in hearts and clubs in middle position, and I make the call as well. Try not to fuck this one up, you little bitch. We wind up seeing a flop six-handed, which falls King 10, 3, all hearts. When it checks to me, like a dumbass, I again bet the full pot of 12,000. You must hate money, you dumbass. I really should be betting smaller here. 5 to 6,000 would be fine. Yes, sometimes I'll let someone with a bullshit two-pair get there, but I want them putting money in while behind, and I just don't need to be betting this large. We are down to the final two tables of the tournament and playing nine-handed. Blinds are 1,000, 2,000. In the big blind, I look down at Ace 10, 5-2, suited in clubs to my ace. Under the gun raises to 5,500.
Another gun makes it 5,500. Rude. Just trying to make the vlog.
I wanted to straddle. To lose your money. I know Chuck.
The small blind calls, and while my 5 and deuce are pretty junky, I like my suited ace enough to come along. The flop is King 7-3 with two clubs. When the small blind checks to me, this is a relatively good flop to see. There aren't a ton of connected cards that would give my opponent two pair or straight draws. At best, the raiser will show up with a set of kings. But aside from that, this flop isn't great for him. I have the nut flush draw, plus some straight possibilities, and I take the betting lead, putting out 12,000. He folds and under the gun announces he had queens, so I did wind up getting him off a hand that was beating me at the moment. With blinds at 1, 2, there's three limpers before us, and I'm in the hijack with ace-queen, 9-8 suited in clubs to my ace. My hand is decent enough that I could raise to push out some of the crumb bums and get position post-flop, but if I get re-raised, my hand isn't really strong enough to go to war, so I decided to just call and see how things develop. The button, small blind, and big blind come along, and we are going 7 ways to a flop. The flop is Queen, Queen 6 Rainbow. When it checks to me, I finally lake my play here, betting 6K into a pot of 14K. It's very unlikely we'll run into a full house at the moment, so at worst, I expect I'd be up against someone with a queen, but a weaker kicker. No one has a queen, however, and I'll take this one down. 14 players remain in the field as we've just lost one, so we're 7-handed at my table with blinds at 1,000, 2,500. I'm in the small blind, and I look down at 4-4-3-3, double suited in spades and clubs. Overall, a pretty weak holding, but with a couple of limpers out there and only another 1,500 for me to call, I come along, as does the big blind. We see a flop 5-handed, which falls 10-5-3 with two hearts. This board texture isn't one that's going to hit many opponents' limping ranges. The cards aren't overly connected. I have key blockers in my hand for the straight draw that is present, so my only real concern on a board texture like this is someone with a flush draw or top set. Aside from that, this board texture favors my range from the blinds rather than one of the limpers. I opt to bet the full pot of 12,500, but I think you can probably bet 7,500 to 8,000 and accomplish the same result. The big blind calls, and everyone else just gets out of the way. Since he just called, I can pretty much take top set out of his range, as he'd re-raise here to protect against the flush draw, unless by some miracle he has top set and the flush draw, then I'm royally fucked. The turn is not what I want to see. The Jack of Hearts, bringing in the front door flush and my opponent's most likely hand. I check, and surprisingly, my opponent checks back as well. The river is a 2 of hearts. My opponent didn't bet when the flush came in on the turn, and overall the board texture aside from the flush hasn't changed much. Yes, a straight is now possible, but I have 2 cards that block that. I don't really think I can get value from a worse hand, and I don't think I can get a better hand to fold, so I check, planning to give my opponent an opportunity to bluff.
Hearts. I check.
Check.
Set.
Trade. Yeah, that's good.
Phew.
Left that turn, got it there?
Maybe.
I would have to pot it.
Yeah.
Nothing less.
We are now down to 13 players. Blinds are 1,500, 3,000. In the big line, I look down at ace 10, 9-5 suited in clubs to my ace. It's folded to the small blind, who raises to 9,000. And getting 2-1 on a call, plus having position, I come along.
Hold my wine, bitches!
The flop is Jack 8-3 with 2 clubs. My opponent snap bets pot of 18,000, and I flopped an absolute fucking monster. Not only do I have the nut flush draw, but I have an open-ended straight draw on top of it. I announce pot, raising it to 72,000.
He calls. Okay.
I work in mysterious ways, bitches!
The turn is the beautiful 5 of clubs, giving me the stone cold stunner. I only have 25,500 remaining in my stack, and with 162,000 in the pot, there's nothing much left to do but get it in. My opponent winds up having about the best possible situation pre-flop you can usually hope for, with 65% equity against my hand. But on the flop, the equities almost flip, and I have 63% equity, and I get him to commit to the pot when he calls my raise.
All in.
How much is that?
25. I got the nuts. You got outs? I had an open-end straight draw and then a flush draw. King of diamonds on the river. Thank you, sir. Best dealer in the room.
Blinds are now 3-6, and in the small blind, I look down at King Queen, 10-8, with no suits. It folds to me, and I just call from the small blind. I could raise as well, but I really don't like playing a bloated pot out of position, and my hand is strong enough in a blind versus blind that I can limp and call a raise, but I might not feel comfortable if I raise and get re-raised.
Watch me whip, watch me nay-nay, bitches!
The flop comes King 8-2 Rainbow. I decide to check. I flop top 2 pair on a very safe flop, and I want to give my opponent some rope to hang himself with. He bets the full pot of 12,000, and I check raise his ass to 48,000.
This is my key card. I fold. This is my key card. I will fold bottom 2 to you. Just because I'm not feeling it right now.
Thank you, sir.
Because another deuce was coming.
You needed the deuce. Deuce was your out.
2 pair might have been ahead, but I don't feel like doubling you up.
Another player has busted, and on the button with blinds at 3-6, I look down at King 5-4 double suited in spades and diamonds after under the gun has limped in. I announce pot, raising to 27,000, and he thinks for a bit, but lays it down. With blinds at 4-8, it folds to me in middle position holding ace-ace 6-6, suited in clubs. I announce pot, raising to 28,000. The cutoff is the only caller. The flop falls Jack 8-4 with 2 spades. This isn't a great spot. We're out of position against our only opponent, and the board texture favors our opponent's calling range over our raising range. In addition, we don't have a single blocker to the spade flush draw. I opt to check, and my opponent bets 30,000. Unfortunately, I have to lay this one down. When we got down to the final table, the 9 of us agreed on an ICM chop. I would follow this event up with another final table, finishing in 6th place in the next quarterly PLO tournament this past February. And while my Hendon Mom doesn't show it, I have played the Lodge Wednesday night quote-unquote free roll a total of 6 times, because the Lodge only tracks the initial $30 buy-in and not the other $215 in add-ons you can do throughout the event. Hendon Mom doesn't accept results from the PLO free roll. Out of 6 times playing it, I have final tabled 4 of them, bubbling the money in 1, but then ICM chopping twice and also scoring a nice 2nd place finish. In early June, I'll be in Vegas for a week to play up to 3 events at the 2023 World Series of Poker, including 2 brand new events, the $1,500 Badoogie and the $3 million guaranteed Gladiators of Poker. And there's also an 8-handed $1,000 buy-in PLO bracelet event in there as well. You can buy a piece of my action with no markup over at Stake Kings. I'll leave a link in the description and comments down below. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode.
You know, after watching a video like this, sometimes I'll like it, sometimes I'll leave a comment, and sometimes I'll subscribe. Sometimes I'll even do all 3.